afternoon and welcome to Virtual Day Trip to Wine Country. I'm Sam Kimball from New York Wine Events. Happy Thursday, everybody. It's a beautiful day here on the East Coast. Of course, I am virtually not on the East Coast. I am coming to you today from Napa Valley, beautiful Napa Valley, way west, the world famous wine growing region. Napa was one of the original counties in California. It was actually, I believe, the first one founded in 1850 at the time of statehood. And we all know it as an iconic wine region. And we are super excited because of today's visit and the winery we're going to be spending time with. Napa Valley is up there with the likes of France in the world of wine and on the wine stage. We're talking the top of the mountain. A little historical trivia. The first winery in Napa was founded in 1859. It's 161 years ago. So these guys out there have been making wine for a long time, and they've gotten really, really good at it. And it's with that in mind that it's really only fitting that we're heading to Robert Biale Vineyards, Napa Valley's premier Zinfandel and Petite Syrah winery. These folks have been have had a long and prestigious history, and today we're going to be learning about one of the calling cards of the winery, which is Zinfandel, and we'll be tasting 3 different Zinfandel selections. It should be noted, to learn all about Robert Biale Vineyards, you can visit biale.com. That's BIALE.com. And as always, if you have questions during our session and tasting, please put them in the Q&A in Zoom and we will tackle them. I should mention, at New York Wine Events, we are familiar with the winery. We've worked with Biale at some of our events. We know them, love the work that they do. And we're so excited to, this is the first virtual day trip to wine country we've taken out west since launching the series a few weeks ago.
Wow.
So it's my pleasure today to introduce our co-host and guest speaker, Bob Biale, one of the founders, and today the president and manager of vineyard operations at Robert Biale Vineyards. Welcome, Bob. It's great having you.
Hey, thanks, Sam. I'm so excited. Thanks for the invitation, man. It really means a lot.
Well, it's so cool to have you guys with us. You come from a family heritage and history of folks who grew grapes in the Napa Valley. And I'd love to know, and I think our viewers would love to know a little bit about, how did Biale get started and as we know it today, the operation you have, how did that get started originally?
Yeah, sure. You know, my family originally from Italy. My mother's actually from Piedmont, Piemonte, northern Italy. My grandfather and whatnot, my dad's side from Liguria, you know, it's another great growing region up there. They arrived here in the 20s and they started planting grapes and growing grapes in the 30s in Napa. So we kind of lucked out. You know, you're talking about Napa. You know, it's a small place, but a big name, right? There's a lot to this out here now. When they arrived, they just recognized it. They landed here, and they just recognized it as, wow, this is pretty good.
And this was in the 30s.
This was when they arrived in the 20s and started their little operation of grape growing in the 30s.
Wow. So you're coming up on, the family is coming up on almost 100 years.
Yeah, we're getting
growing
there.
grapes in Napa.
Yeah, there's older, there's even more generations than I am here, other families, but we're proud of what we have. So my grandfather put in Zinfandel, and at the time, Zin and Petite Syrah were the 2 varieties that put Napa on the map. And so it wasn't a big risk for him. He knew what he was getting into, and he really loved those grapes. And my dad just went crazy for it. And that's what we started with, and that's what we've hunkered down with throughout our history here.
So I think it's interesting for our audience to know, because on the East Coast and around the world, there's such a tremendous passion, and deservedly so, for California Cabernet Sauvignon. But really, the grapes that put Napa on the map were originally Zinfandel and Petite Syrah.
That's right. And so that's a kind of a big point to make. And it in the 70s, of course, in the 60s, I don't know if you recall, but in 1966, Robert Biale built his winery, and he really hunkered down on those European varieties of Bordeaux and Burgundy. And he really was chasing France for sure. And it was a good hunch. He thought it would work here in Napa. And sure enough, in 76, Napa wins the Judgment of Paris. So his hunch was right. But my dad, he loved Zinfandel, and he really honored the grape, honored our tradition that we had already started, and what Napa had started way before him. And so now, that's why we're kind of doing what we're doing. We want to honor that past, that what put Napa in its place in the beginning. And well, these days, once we started making wine, we make 15 different Zinfandels. So we've really hunkered down on this category. Dave, one of my business partners, likes to say that, we're like historical preservationists in some ways. A lot of the vineyards that we work with are between 75 or 130 years old, right? So It's not only preserving these, but then it's stewarding these vineyards into the next generation. And that's why we do what we do. It's as simple as that. We not only love the grape, but we feel like there's a big responsibility to work with these. And there you have it.
That's such a great recounting of and the word that you guys use a lot is heritage, of the heritage. I will tell you, and I'll make this story really, really quick, that 20 years ago, when I first started getting interested in wine and I really knew nothing about it, a guy that I did business with gave me a bottle of wine. He was a wine person and he had a collection, and he gave me a bottle of Zinfandel. And it wasn't in the sort of traditional, the shape of a Bordeaux bottle, a beautiful sort of classic French bottle shape. It was a little bit rounder and squat. And I thought, oh, that's nice. I mean, he gave me one of his, some random wine from his
Right.
cellar. And when I tried it that night at home, my wife made a beautiful dinner, and it was a California Red Zinfandel, very good one. And I literally, like, when I opened it and tasted it before she put dinner on the table, I literally let out a yell. So, oh my God. She said, "What's the matter?" I said, "This wine is unbelievable." And I'd never tasted anything like that.
Wow.
And it was a Turley Zinfandel. It was a classic California Red Zin. It was so big and so delicious and so structured and amazing. I'd never tasted anything like it. And that's what got me into doing what I do today, was Red Zinfandel from California.
No way. Okay, that's a good story. Thank you, Sam. And don't worry, we love Larry Turley's wines and Tegan, the winemaker. Honestly, we drink them ourselves. I buy them. So,
well, yours are not too shabby.
Well, thank you.
We have some people watching. I can see already in the chat. We have some people who know the winery and know you. So I think that's
great.
Awesome. And so they know how amazing the wines are. But for those of you watching who have not had Biale, when you try it, you are in for a treat.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell us about how you developed, further developed that. You when you launched the winery was many years later, after your grandfather and your father, right?
Right.
But you decided to stay with those grapes.
Yeah, right. A lot of it's some of it was emotional, some of it was just thinking we're doing the right thing, and then the other part was, oh God, we just love Zinfandel. Like you just said, that big wow moment. it's just so pleasurable. When it's done right, in our opinion, it is off the chart. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. No, it's amazing.
so let's start the winery in '91, right? It's like we figured, we're doing the growing, and we figure, well, let's try our hand at producing now. And we started small. We started with 400 cases, and
wow.
yeah, and we had 4 people in this little operation. It was my dad, myself, Al Perry, the original winemaker for 18 years, and Dave Pramick, a school friend from 4th grade. And together we all had our little responsibilities, and we just took off, kept our day jobs for almost 10 years,
And that was 1991.
That was 91, right.
Wow.
And it turned out, it worked. We all loved doing this. It was the category that we really believed in. And now after all these years, it's turned out to be a good idea. So.
And how many cases do you produce today?
Total, about 20 wines, about 15,000.
Right. So it's grown. It's
grown
grown tremendously.
Right. We're all making a living. There's like 20 employees, and we're all making a living, by the grace of God. So and right now, still things are going okay. So.
Well, there's been a lot of interest online. We've been obviously doing these sessions, but we've seen in our audience a lot of interest in still discovering and learning about new wines. People are asking where they can get them. So I think there's despite the challenging time we're in, the virtual world has given everyone an opportunity to continue to communicate about new selections and
right.
for people to discover new wineries. So our audience loves Napa wines. They may not know the full history of California winemaking, but when you talk about heritage, Bob, and being a preserver, as Dave would say, of age-old practices and traditions of excellence built over many, many decades, how do you approach that? Can you talk a little bit about how you approach that year after year in the present? Like, how do you keep that going in a more practical, detailed sense? Like, what's the process?
Well, first of all, trying to keep the vineyards going themselves, right? I mean, that's the whole idea here, is stewarding these vineyards to the next generation. And gratefully, these days, the farming in Napa in particular, but in Northern California, the bar is really high, and we take tremendous care of the soil itself. So we're starting from the basics. While not all of our growers are organic, they're all sustainable, and they're enriching the soil with organic matter and feeding these vines with organic material. And that's just the very, very first step of trying to keep these vines healthy, vibrant, and as if they're like teenagers. They're not teenagers, but it's important that they are healthy. And so I would think that's probably the first part to your question. And then winemaking wise, it's easy to take a category like this, Zinfandel, and almost turn it into something unrecognizable. There's a lot of versions of Zin out there. And we think Zinfandel can really match some of the finest wines in the world when it's honoring that site and honoring these vines and not pushing it in, literally pushing it into a category that it really wasn't meant to be, in our opinion. And when that is done, I think you find this is the practical side to your question, Sam. I think when you do this category right, it automatically brings into a larger group of people into this category. And in that expression that you just used with Larry Turley's wines, it's just like, oh, I had no idea this wine could be so doggone good. And so that's the expression we are hoping for, that we strive for, that we work for. It's like, whoa, the big aha moment.
Yeah.
And so that's the practical side. If you bring people into the category, the demand is there, and then it keeps these vineyards in the ground. And if they're going to be in the ground, they got to be healthy.
Now, does Biale farm those vineyards and own that land, or do you work with folks who are just growing the grapes and you have a long-term relationship with them?
We do both of that, all of that. We own our vineyards. We own some vineyards and we farm them. We lease some vineyards and we farm them. And then we have growers that we help manage the people that are actually farming those sites, so that they're all kind of farming in our specs, if you know what I mean. That's also really important. You can have $1 million site, $1 million vineyard, but if you're farming it kind of ho-hum, well, that's just not going to work, right?
Right.
So, right. I mean, it's all common sense, but it's all got to get done right. And so anyway, we do a little bit of everything.
And how, when you talk about the vines and taking care of them and sustainability and organic feeding and the care that goes in, how old are these vines typically?
Well, in our case, typically probably the average is more like nearly 75 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. We have some younger blocks and we have some younger vineyards, but in general, all the single vineyards, probably the average age is closer to 95.
Wow.
So yeah, we take the category seriously. I'm telling you, Sam.
No, I mean, it's really incredible. And you obviously, for the most part, probably lower yields, but the quality of that fruit is on another level.
Yeah. And that's, and so there's a little thing right there, what you just said. These older vines, of course, they're not going to yield, tremendous a lot of fruit, but the fruit that comes off it is really, really, it has layers of flavor. It's not always the biggest wine on the table, but the complexity is absolutely off the chart. And that's, people that enjoy wines, well, that's a big part of it, right? It doesn't have to knock you out of your chair. It just has to just like capture you. I mean, just like, okay, yeah. This is it, And
of as you see it, and this, I know Dave is very attuned to this metric and these kinds of details, but I find as a wine industry person that people in California on the West Coast, they know Zinfandel. They know how magical and incredible the wine can be. And on the East Coast, some do, but a lot of people, it's a new experience, which is obviously an opportunity. But yeah. When you go to the Zinfandel experience in San Francisco, it's literally like a rock star show. And all the winemakers there and the people, the consumers show up in droves, a couple thousand people, and they know the wines. They know the vintages, some of them.
Yeah,
And it's been, in my experience, how do you translate that to a wider market, to a place like New York City, where you have lots of people who love wine, but may not be as aware of the magic of Zinfandel?
Yeah. Okay. So good point. New York, in particular, is a very Eurocentric wine market. Think for obvious reasons, right? You're right there. You're close. A lot of European wineries send their wines to New York, and in general, European wines and categories are probably compared to California, maybe you have a lot more, not a lot more finesse, they're more elegant. And I think that's probably a proper way to say that. So in New York, in particular, those that do try Zinfandel might get maybe a tad bit confused, but that's why we are not only us. I would say there's a good 6 or 8 producers in Napa and Sonoma in Northern California that are really bringing Zinfandel to the highest this whole next highest level, right?
Right.
The bar is so high out here now, and we are among that little group that takes the category seriously, so that when someone in New York is fairly used to tasting European wines that are kind of elegant, they taste one of these really well-made Zinfandels, and in my opinion, this next level Zinfandels, and they go, "Oh, got it. This isn't over the top. This isn't something that's gonna ruin my dinner. I can have a whole bottle of it. It's not gonna, I'm not gonna pass out." That is what we're trying to achieve. Not that we're chasing Europe. We're trying to chase the heart and beauty of this category, of what this wine is meant to be. And there are producers that have been doing this for 40 years. And then there are some that are just beginning to understand that, oh, this is the right thing to do. So I think for people that haven't tasted it, don't stop on your first 1 or 2 wines. Try to search for try to search that golden nugget,
Yeah. It's a discovery. I mean, I'm a huge believer in the discovery process, and also taking proactive effort to expand one's palate, and not just always have Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon, maybe some Pinot Noir, but to expand what you're tasting and enjoying. Let's take a quick tour, Bob, of the winery. I've got some backgrounds here. I'll pull up a couple. I mean, what are we looking at right now behind me?
That's the R.W. Moore Vineyard in Coombsville, about 2 miles southeast of the winery. And it sits right below Mount George, and was originally planted in 1905. And
Wow.
We've dubbed it R.W. Moore, named after the current owner, right here. Current owner, there you go. That's one of his vines. That's one of the original ones.
I love that, because that look at the size of that vine. I mean, it's just massive.
Right, you can't make that stuff up, right?
No, that's a 90-year-old vine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Easy. So the current owner, named after Ralph William Moore, more commonly known as Bill, he resurrected this vineyard, and he is the epitome, literally, and also our last grower. These guys are the epitome of what we're trying to achieve. These growers who find themselves with these jewels, and then they're oh my gosh, what is it going to take to resurrect this vineyard, put it back into shape, and make incredibly great wine? Bill found this vineyard in the early 80s. He came across it, and he literally transformed it. And the first producer there for many years was farming it organically, and really set the tone for the vineyard again. And so when it fell into our lap in 2009, we continued these practices, and I tell you, it's just an amazing wine.
And then you have another site, which is the Old Craft.
Right. So that's that's right behind you. That's the Old Craft in St. Helena. Now, this is one of the oldest vineyards in California. This was originally planted in 1860, but then replanted like all the vineyard, virtually every vineyard in California perished because of phylloxera in the 80s, 1880s.
Yeah.
And in that first wave of replant, when the growers were going through and trying to figure it out all over again, they started planting with the rootstock St. George. And this is what this vineyard is on. They started replanting in that, late 1880s. This one was probably planted from the records that we have around 1889, 1890, 91.
Wow.
Right there. And if these vineyards are still in the ground, it literally means that these are the oldest vineyards in California. And we happen to source 4 of them. And we're really, really fortunate. We're honored. We can't believe that they're in our laps and that the growers are maintaining them impeccably. So that's in St. Helena. So we're starting in the south end of Napa with R.W. Moore. Napa, we're only an hour from the Golden Gate Bridge. So we're very influenced by the Bay, right? That's what makes Napa that, and the number of volcanoes. We have a lot of volcanoes, old volcanoes that erupted and over time created Napa to be what it is today. That, coupled with being right next to the Bay or near the Bay, really has created what it is. So this one sits right below Mount George, one of those old volcanoes. And it's the soil is absolutely incredible. Trust our winemaker, Trust Getting, likes to think it's like moonscape, It's
and how far is that one from the R.W. Moore?
So R.W. Moore is the one I'm talking about right now. So
I'm sorry.
We're in the Coombsville district, right?
I think this was
So as we move north, Old Craft, the one right behind you, that'd be the third one we taste today. That's in St. Helena. So that's a half hour north. Napa isn't that big. It's only 30 miles by 5 miles. So like I said, it's a tiny place but a big name. But as you move north away from the Bay, it becomes warmer. And so the trick here is it could be 10 degrees warmer in St. Helena, and the wines can be a little bigger, bolder, richer. We try to grab it before it really is over the top and unrecognizable. But you'll see the transgression as we move through these.
Well, let's get started with tasting. I know that people are excited about hearing about the wines. I think our first one is going to be the R.W. Moore, which is starting at the southern end of the valley. Am I right?
That's right. That's right.
So let me pull up that bottle so everybody can see it next to me. That is the R.W. Moore, Robert Biale Vineyards Zinfandel. Tell us about this one, tasting notes, and maybe a perfect food pairing.
Perfect food pairing. So that's one thing, Sam, that I'm not the best at. I'll just tell you right now. I grew up in a house where we ate what was in front of us. My mother, she's a great, she was a great cook. And I can tell you some of my favorite things. Okay, let's just go with that. So the R.W. Moore, it has this level of richness to it that is a little unusual for the southern end of Napa Valley, because what we typically find here in our region and in Coombsville are wines that are kind of brisk and bright. R.W. Moore is a little bit of an anomaly. It sits in this kind of like banana belt over there underneath, right at the foot of Mount George, and it gets easily ripe. It's not like struggling for ripeness at all. And so there's this real level of coating as it goes over your mouth. It just like fills it, almost exploding. And and so you have this sensation of real silkiness. So for me, on a wine like this, I don't want to overwhelm it with anything too much. There's this really wonderful dish my mom used to make that she would braise this. We had hundreds of chickens. We grew up raising chickens. So we had our fair share of that, as well as pheasants and doves and rabbits and all that stuff. That, you know, we're Italian, right? Everything was working. We ate what ran in front of us. and so my mother would braise these chickens in this white wine sauce, and that it turned out to it was so beautiful. It was simple. Everything was very simple, and then of course the vegetables in there. And I think a wine like this that is perfectly ripe would pair absolutely perfect with this really elegant chicken, believe it or not.
I think that's great. I mean, because most people would not intuitively combine Zinfandel with chicken, but you're giving such a great description. It sounds like it's a perfect combination for that particular dish.
Right. I mean, you know, you can do the whole barbecue, burger, steak, pork, and all that stuff. You can do all that. But what I'm saying is these wines can reach out to other categories of food, and you would love it. Believe me.
That's awesome.
So that's the RW more.
So speaking of chickens, I've been waiting all day to put this background in my screen.
Watch for black chicken.
For black chickens. Okay, so the next wine is perhaps the most well-known or the most famous wine that comes from Robert Biale Vineyards, and that's the Black Chicken Zinfandel. It's such a great name, and I've been waiting all day to ask you this, Bob. How did you come to call this wine the Black Chicken?
Well, okay. Well, it wasn't me who came up with the name. It was my dad.
Okay.
So in 1942, my dad's a boy. He's 13 years old, and his father suddenly passed away, kind of tragically. And it was an industrial accident. And this is unusual too. My dad was an only child, and for an Italian Catholic, that's like, wow, that's like, you know, kind of unheard of. But in any case, that was it. And he's left alone with his mother, who could barely speak English, but man, she turned out to be, my Nonna was one of the hardest working, smartest women I've known. Smartest, yeah, without a doubt. I'm just not saying that. Anyway, so they're left alone with this little tiny ranch. And like I said earlier, the ranch has got lots of things going on. It's got lots of fruit trees, prunes and walnuts, vegetables. But what they were making a living on was chickens. They were raising them, selling the eggs, and chickens themselves. And my dad, he early, before, just to step back just a tad bit, my grandfather, for the first 10 years, was the vit guy and the cellar guy for a nice little German outfit up on Mount Veeder. It's on the Maicomas Range over here on the west side. So when my grandfather arrived, that's where he landed, and he started it up there. So when he purchased his first little parcel down here on the valley floor in the district that we now know, Oak Knoll, he started with the vineyard and whatnot, but he passed away before he could make any wine.
Is that right?
My father thought, well, let's honor what Nonu or Dad wanted to do. And so he had an uncle that was kind of put together in this way also. And so he got some pointers from his uncle and started making wine. Now, of course, they're just not going to make it and just let it sit there. They're going to sell it, for crying out loud. And they're not going to worry about a license, a permit, and all that baggage and all that. I mean, why do that?
Right.
I mean, okay. So in those days, they were selling their eggs and whatnot, and they had this party line phone system. They were out in the country, right? And a party line phone system is a public phone. I mean, a lot of people don't know what that is, but you pick up the phone and people are actually listening. And you're not supposed to pick it up unless it was your ring, like 2 longs and a short or something like that.
Right.
But everybody, if it rang in your house, everybody picked it up. As a matter of fact, we had it when I was growing up, and I picked it up. I was nosy. I wanted to know what was going on. So he knew that. So he's trying to sell this wine. So they would call up on this party line phone system, and they go, "Hey, Aldo, I need 3 dozen eggs and a black chicken." His code word for a jug of Zin that he sold for $1 a gallon, and he would deliver it on a Friday night in his 1940 Studebaker. And he was 14. He got away with all kinds of crap. And I can't make this stuff up. That's just the way it is.
So that's the black chicken was code word for Zinfandel.
For a jug of Zin. Exactly. For Zinfandel. And it was Zinfandel. I mean, that's all it was. It's kind of the funny part. There's a second part to that, and so it's actually better. My dad, so he was 14, right? 10 years go by, and this operation is kind of moving. He and his mother go to Italy, and he meets my wife, or he meets his future wife, Clementina. Meets this really lovely woman. And no lie, they get married within 6 weeks. And it was just meant to be. And so he had to leave, and it took like 6 months for her to get her papers and all that, got them all in order. When she arrives in Napa, she was kind of overwhelmed. I mean, they came from the hills and whatnot. And now, although Napa wasn't what it is like today, it was still a lot more going on here. And within the first week, she's down in the basement, and the phone is ringing quite a bit, right? So she finally picks it up, and of course it's in Italian. Nonna is out in the chicken shed, and Aldo's out in the field. So she picks it up, and it was in Italian, gratefully. And so they speak in Italian, and she still remembered the name. It was Luigi, and he goes, "Oh wow, Clementina, God, this is great. Aldo has been telling us all about you for these last 6 months. I really want to come by and meet you. But in the meantime, just tell Aldo, I need a couple dozen eggs and a black chicken." Actually, he called it gallina nera, right. Black chicken. And and she kind of scratches her head because she goes, Luigi, there's, I've only been here a little bit, but I don't see any black chickens. There's only those white ones out there that Christina has, the mother-in-law, my nonna. And that kind of pissed Luigi off. And he goes, "Clementina, you just tell Aldo I need that black chicken." Bam, slams down the phone. She had no idea what she was getting into. My dad's bootlegging Zin and whatnot. And my dad had a good old laugh at in the evening time when he came back home. And so my mother just kind of rolled with the punches for all those years.
That's awesome.
But they did it for like 25 years. I mean, it was working.
So you talked about the R.W. Moore. What's the hallmark? What's the calling card of the Black Chicken Zinfandel? How would you describe it? What are those tasting notes?
Yeah. This one is a little bit bigger in the sense of probably a little bit more tannic than these other two. So this is kind of like in the center here. And the reason why it's a little bit more structure is that the heart of this vineyard comes from our old vineyard, and it's a huge field blend. It has 9 different varieties growing in it, And these varieties are really meant for long-term aging. Things like Carignan and Petite, Syrah, and other kind of bigger, bolder wines. And so that's a big part of what's in here. And so Black Chicken, while you can drink it in its first 2 or 3 years and it's going to be lovely, you can feel confident in 8 and 10 years, it's going to be there for you. And
this is an ageable, a bottle of Black Chicken is an ageable wine.
Well, without a doubt. I mean, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there are some people that really prefer not to age Zinfandel at all. And that's fine and dandy. They get the beautiful freshness and the vibrancy and the fruitiness and all of that. And that's all really lovely. My wife is one of these people. But if someone were to be patient, and depending on the vineyard itself and the vintage, you know, they can really be surprised and just they develop into really elegant, beautiful, luscious wines. Not that this is an 18, it's baby fresh, you know, and I love it. I mean, I love it. I can drink it tonight. But I know in 10 years I can come back to this one. It'll be there.
That's amazing, because a lot of wine that we all drink is basically meant to be consumed in the now, and
sure.
To have something. What's the like R.W. Moore? What was the retail on that bottle?
This is you're asking me, and I should know this. It's 58. This one is 58. Black Chicken is 50.
Yeah.
And Old Craft is 58 also.
Right. So what's interesting to me is, you know, here you have bottles in the $50 range. They're not inexpensive, but they're not expensive in the true sense of the word. And when you take a Black Chicken, for example, at $50, for most people that wouldn't even realize, like, that's a bottle you can age, and in fact it's going to have some characteristics that are wonderful in 5 and 10 years. And it's not, you're not buying a multi-$100 bottle of Bordeaux. You're buying something that is equally well crafted, but is, in terms of value, that much better.
Yeah, right. That's a good point, because these are Napa wines, and so we're competing these days with Napa prices for grapes.
Right.
And not only that, these vineyards, even if we weren't in Napa, these vineyards deserve the pricing that they have. They're some of the oldest vines in California. They're farmed impeccably, and so they're true treasures just on themselves. I didn't really maybe make a point that Black Chicken is not a single vineyard. You know, it comes from our home block, our winery blocks, and some neighbors in the southern end of Napa mostly.
It's all Zin, but it's a blend of different blocks.
Exactly. So it doesn't have the single vineyard category. So
that's great. Well, we've unlocked the mystery of the Black Chicken, which is awesome. Old Craft Vineyards Zinfandel 2018 is the next one. Yeah,
well, like I said earlier, that was planted originally in 1860, replanted in the late 1880s, 1890. It remains one of the oldest vineyards in California, which is an honor to have this type of wine.
These are 130-year-old vines making the wine that you're pouring right now.
Kind of crazy when you think about it, right? I mean, so I'm also a board member of on Historic Vineyard Society, and along with some of the producers that I have deeply respected over time of Zinfandel, as it turns out. And our mission is to locate and categorize any vineyard that's 50 years or more in California. And the purpose is to, first of all, in this glimpse of time right now, this is what's growing in California. These are the vineyards. And so that in 50 years from now, people can go back to this documentation and kind of see a transition. And what we really hope for is that they're going to see more and more vineyards that are in this category of 50 years and more, that we've hopefully have started some sort of trend that growers could feel confident with, that they can make money on these older vineyards, even though they're producing less fruit. There are wineries willing to pay for this, pay dearly. Let me tell you, pay dearly for this fruit. And so the growers can feel confident about leaving it in the ground. And it's been really successful, to tell you the truth. We host tastings. We host quite a few tastings. They're in California at the moment. We'd like to move across the country, but at the moment they're in California. And they're just not Zinfandel. I mean, one of our old vineyards in Calistoga is a 95-year-old Barbera vineyard. And so it is so cool that in this glimpse of time right now, we can document not only Zinfandel, but all these varieties that are growing in the ground, and that growers are honoring this and stewarding them to the next generation. And so anyway, Old Craft has made it for a long time. Again, it's warmer up there, so it can get to be a little richer and bolder and riper. But it's not over the top. It still has lovely red fruit. It's not all plummy. This one at the moment is really explosive in fruitiness. This could be Tress, our winemakers, in the spring release that we have. This could be his favorite one. I mean, we all have our favorites, but this one for him just really explodes. And I mean, for me too, I love it.
And I'm guessing this one is a great pairing with the, bold foods. It could be
right.
A spaghetti bolognese or spaghetti with red sauce and meatballs type of thing.
Right. And so what we would have done, going back to how my mother would have cooked, this one, I would have put this one really with one of her rabbit stews and over polenta.
Yeah.
And it would be a bigger, bolder, richer, kind of like, and this could easily cut through that. And it would really complement it really, really nicely. And rabbit is really delicious if people haven't had them. We raised them, so it was easy. We had them all the time.
Well, and it's a staple, especially in all over Italy, but northern Italy. If you visit a agriturismo, or a tartufero, like there's rabbits in the back.
Yeah, isn't it true? It's funny how our culture is kind of like not embraced. We just haven't embraced it. We'll have them as pets, but but I don't want to get into the old bunny thing, but I tell you, it's a lovely food item also.
It's a great meat and great for pairing with these kinds of wines. So Bob, where can we buy these wines?
Well, the Black Chicken, you can find hopefully in your local beautiful wine shop.
That has national distribution.
It has national distribution, exactly right. This is the one that we treat them all very, very carefully, but we really treat Black Chicken very carefully because it's everywhere. And so anyway, they can buy this in their local wine shop. And of course,
also on biale.com.
Thank you for bringing it up. The single vineyards are a little more scarce, of course, but on our website, biale.com.
Yeah, those are much the lower case production, obviously, than the Black
Right.
Chicken. And
Right.
and I think that Maura mentioned there is a deal that's available now, and I'd be remiss not to let the audience know their flat $29 shipping rate on any purchase on any amount of bottles anywhere in the U.S. where it can be shipped. You ship to most states, right?
We do, yeah. There's a couple of them that we can not, but everywhere
Only
else.
a couple, though.
There's only a couple now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a great deal, because anybody who orders wine from California or directly from a winery knows whether it's, sometimes you can order one bottle and it's at least that $29. But if you order 2 or 3 of these, that's a great deal on shipping. So
Yeah.
important to note.
Right. And yeah.
And you also have a wine club.
We do. Thanks. You're Johnny on the spot, Sam. Thank you. We do, and by the grace of God, in these days, it's these wonderful, loyal people have enabled us to continue. And we have 20 employees, and we haven't laid anyone off, and it's a real blessing. And so we do have a very vibrant, loyal. What we call it is Black Chicken Society, our BCS members.
Yep.
And so, yeah, and of course they get a little bit of most of the wines, and the very, very small wines that we don't even have enough to give them a bottle. They get first dibs on these, and so those wines, all these wines go fairly quickly, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and I'm on your email list, so I get the allocation offers, which is awesome. That's another way, by the way, for anybody watching to participate and be able to get some of these wines, because some of them, the Black Chicken is available nationally at retail and on the website, but some of the others, a lot of them are on the website, but I think there's some that only they sell out in the emails that come from Biale.
They do, but it's a matter of chance, I guess. You just get on and see what's available. But at the moment, these are brand new releases, and so when they go on, they will see our full lineup of spring wines. So it's a good time to check what we actually have.
I was on the website earlier, and you are so right. It's there. Everything's on there right now, which is exciting. Bob, I'm going to wrap up. We have one question that I'd like to have you field, and that comes from Carol. She says, "I love your Zinfandels. How has the pandemic affected the vineyards and the staff and the workflow to tend the vines? Are the vineyard teams out and about? How's that been?"
Well, actually, it's so from a practical point of view, plants and vines and whatnot continue to grow like crazy, right? I mean, they have no idea what's going on. So they're marching forward, and our vineyard crews, we have strict guidelines now of how they can interact with each other, and how they have to progress during the day, and how they're working in the field themselves.
Yeah.
As it turns out. And we keep and we do that same thing in the cellar. We have a small cellar staff, so it's not like we're all bumping into each other. It's pretty easy to maintain these types of work conditions these days. And the same thing with with the upstairs, the admin. Some people are working from home, they've chosen to, and some people are working at the office. And as a group, we're communicating via these Zoom staff meetings and whatnot. And I just have to tell you, I mean, by the grace of God, things are they're going really well. and it's in large part because of this really loyal BCS group that we have.
Well, Carol, who sounds like she might be a BCSer, rest assured, Carol, that things are still getting tended to at the winery.
Oh, they are.
and we will see the 2020 wines eventually. Quick comment, and then we should wrap up. Alan says he was at the winery in early March and that you guys did a spectacular tasting experience. So we're looking forward to brighter days, and when you're back, tasting room is open and everyone can experience that at your location. Bob, it's been great having you today. Thank you so much for making the time. It was truly a privilege. Your place is so prestigious, and the brand. We'd love to have you back. Maybe we should have you back and do a pairing with a rabbit dish.
All right, Sam. Maybe we'll take you up on that. My wife has taken the mantle of all my mother's cooking, and she's doing a bang-up job. So, wow, that could be a cool. We're gonna have Wendy here, and we can do it together.
Yeah, that'd be amazing, and it, maybe even that and one other that 2 ways to pair black chicken. Could be that or some other dish. But
very cool, very good.
It's so great. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. My first falling in love with wine was with Zinfandel, and I'm still a huge fan. And thank you again for being part of this. We will talk to you and see you soon, and looking forward to the next one.
You're welcome, Sam. It's been a real honor and a pleasure. You're a gentleman. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you soon.
All right. Ciao.
Take care.
Okay.